"You can sleep here tonight." She looked at him the way a woman looks at a man when she has tried to decide if he means what he says, or something else entirely. "Just tonight," he said. "I know what tonight means," she said. She walked through the door anyway. And by morning, everything had changed. Not the way things change in stories where someone says something grand and the world rearranges itself around the declaration. The way things actually change. Quietly. The way a creek changes course after long rain. Not all at once. Not with any announcement. Just a slow, inevitable shift toward where the ground was always going to let it go. Caleb Harmon had been asked a lot of things in his 34 years. He had been asked about pasture conditions and water rights, and whether the North herd was ready for the October drive. He had been asked by his neighbor Frank Briggs whether he needed help pulling the wagon out of the East Creek bed after the spring thaw. He had been asked by Reverend Aldridge whether he was coming to the harvest supper, and by the feed store owner Dale Cutler whether he wanted the 40-pound bag or the 60. Nobody had ever walked up to his gate in the middle of a November storm and asked him for nothing. Not asked, just stood there, with a child on her hip and a carpet bag in her other hand, and rain running off the brim of a hat that was too big for her head, and the expression of a woman who has used up every option except the one standing in front of her. Her name was Louisa Crane. She was 26 years old. She had come to Harmon Creek from Abilene on the Tuesday stage with $43, a carpet bag containing everything she decided to keep, and a daughter named May who was 3 years old and had her mother's dark eyes and the calm, watchful quality of a child who has learned early that the world requires attention. She had not planned to stop in Harmon Creek. Harmon Creek was a town of 240 people on the western edge of the Wyoming Territory with a general store, a livery stable, a church that doubled as a schoolhouse on weekdays, a post office that was also a barbershop, and a single boarding house run by a woman named Agnes Pruitt, who was, by the time Louisa arrived, full up for the season. Full up? Agnes said through a 3-inch gap in the door. "It's one room," Louisa said. "One room and one child." "Full up?" Agnes said. The gap closed. Louisa stood on the steps of Agnes Pruitt's boarding house with May on her hip and the carpet bag at her feet, and the November rain, coming down in a particular determined way it comes down in Wyoming, when it has decided that everything is going to get wet, and there is no point in arguing. She had $43. She had a stage ticket that had cost her 18 of them. She had a daughter who had not complained once since Abilene, and who was currently watching the rain with the philosophical expression of a 3-year-old who has accepted that weather is something that simply happens. She had a letter in her bag from a woman named Clara Betts who had written in September saying there was work at the Harmon Creek School for a woman with teaching experience, and would she come? And Louisa had come, and Clara Betts' husband had answered the door this morning, and said his wife had gone to her sister's in Cheyenne 2 weeks ago, and he didn't know anything about any letter. That was the full accounting. $43 minus 18. A child who trusted her completely. A letter that led nowhere. A boarding house door that had closed in her face. And a November storm that was not going to stop for her convenience. She had started walking with no particular direction. Not the way you walk when you know where you're going. The way you walk when you need to be moving, because standing still feels like giving up, and you have not given up yet. You have not given up. You're not going to give up because there's a child on your hip who is watching the rain with perfect faith that her mother knows what comes next. She walked past the general store, which was closed. She walked past a livery, which smelled of horses and dry hay, and for one brief moment, she thought about going inside, and then thought about what she was and was not willing to do, and kept walking. She walked to the edge of town where the road turned north toward the creek, and there was a gate with a lantern burning on the post. And through the rain, she could see the shape of a house with light in the windows, and she stopped. She stood at that gate for a long moment. May patted her cheek with one small hand. "Mama," May said, not a question, just an acknowledgement. "I am here. You are here." Louisa opened the gate. Caleb Harmon heard the knock at the exact moment. He had decided the night was done, and he was going to put out the lamp and go to bed. He had been up since 4 in the morning. He had spent 14 hours doing the kind of work that a ranch in November requires, which is to say the kind of work that is never finished, only paused, only deferred until tomorrow, when it will be waiting again with the same patience and the same indifference to whether you are tired. He was tired. He opened the door anyway, Because a man alone on a ranch in a November storm who hears a knock at his door opens it. That is simply what you do. She was standing on his porch, rain-soaked, a child on her hip, a bag at her feet, the expression of a woman who has been turned away from one door already tonight, and is not going to ask for anything she doesn't have to ask for. She didn't ask. She said, "I saw your light." He looked at her. He looked at the child, who looked back at him with the dark, unafraid eyes of a person who has not yet learned that strangers are something to be cautious about, or perhaps has already learned that caution is less useful than assessment, and has assessed him and found nothing alarming. He looked at the rain, which was coming down harder now. He looked back at the woman. "You can sleep here tonight," he said. She looked at him the way a woman looks at a man when she is trying to decide if he means what he says or something else entirely. "Just tonight," he said. "I know what tonight means," she said. She walked through the door. The inside of Caleb Harmon's house was the inside of a house that has been kept by a man alone for 7 years. Orderly in the way that practical things are orderly. A table with 2 chairs. A fireplace with a good fire. A kitchen that was clean because he cooked his own food and had learned early that a dirty kitchen produces bad meals. A shelf with 8 books, their spines worn, read more than once. Nothing decorative. Nothing that had been chosen for its appearance rather than its use. Nothing that suggested another person had ever stood in this room and thought, "This is mine too." Louisa stood just inside the door and dripped on the floor and looked at the room and said nothing. May looked at the fire. "Fire," May said with satisfaction, as though she'd been looking for one and was pleased to have found it. "Yes," Caleb said. He was looking at the child. "How old?" "3. Louisa said. She talked much when she has something to say. He almost smiled. He gave him the bedroom. He said it the way he said most things, directly and without making it into more than it was. "You take the bedroom. I'll be fine." "We don't need the bedroom," Louisa said. "You need somewhere dry. The floor by the fire is dry. The bedroom has a bed." "Mr. Harmon, Caleb Harmon. Mr. Harmon, we are not putting you out of your bed. You're not putting me anywhere. I'm deciding." She looked at him for a moment. The kind of look a woman gives a man when she is recalibrating something she thought she understood. "Louisa Crane," she said, "and this is May." May had stopped looking at the fire and was now looking at Caleb with the focused attention of a child who has decided someone is interesting. "Hello, May," he said. "Hello," May said gravely. He heated water for them. He didn't announce it. He just did it. He hung Louisa's coat by the fire and set her wet boots near the hearth and brought May a blanket that was slightly too large for a 3-year-old and therefore perfect for wrapping. He made coffee for himself and heated milk for May, which May accepted with both hands around the cup, an expression of someone receiving exactly what they needed without having asked for it. Louisa sat at the table with her coffee and said, "We're looking for work." "Here," he said. "I had a letter saying there was a teaching position." He knew Clara Betts, knew the situation, knew the school had been without a teacher since spring. "Clara's gone," he said. "I know that now. The school board hasn't found anyone." She looked at her coffee. "Who's the school board?" she said. "Dale Cutler, Frank Briggs, Reverend Aldridge. Do they meet regularly?" "First Thursday of the month. That's 4 days from now." "Yes," he said. She was quiet. He watched her. Not the way a man watches a woman, because she is a woman. The way a man watches a person who is working something out, and who is working it out with the focused, unhurried efficiency of someone who does not have the luxury of panic. "Is there work before Thursday?" she said. "What kind of work?" "Any kind." This is a part of the story where I want to stop for a moment, because this is the moment I come back to, not the door opening, not what he said on the porch. This, her asking for work, not charity, not rescue, work. A woman with $25 left and a 3-year-old daughter and one failed lead and a November storm outside, and she sat at a stranger's table and asked about Thursday's school board meeting. That kind of steadiness doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from somewhere. We'll get there. Before we go on, I want to take a moment. From the United States to Australia, from Canada to the United Kingdom, from Ireland to South Africa, from India to New Zealand. Wherever you are tonight, thank you for sitting with me at this table. If this story is giving you a good evening, a like means more than you know. And I want to ask, what country are you listening from tonight? Drop it in the comments. I read them. I want to know where this voice is reaching. Let's get back now, because Caleb Harmon is about to answer a question, and the answer is going to surprise him as much as it surprises her. There's work here, he said. She looked up. The ranch, he said. I've been shorthanded since August. There's cooking, if you're willing. Mending. There's a milk cow that needs daily attention. The hands eat at 6 and noon. It's not teaching. It's work, she said. It's work, he agreed. What does it pay? He named a figure. She considered it the way she considered everything, without rushing, without performing either gratitude or objection. And May, she said. She stays where you are, he said. She won't be in the way? He looked at the child, who had finished her milk and was now examining the rug with the thorough attention of a scientist conducting fieldwork. She's not in the way, he said. He showed them to the bedroom. He changed the bedding without being asked. He was matter-of-fact about it the way he was matter-of-fact about everything. Not cold, not warm, just present, just doing what needed doing. May climbed onto the bed and pulled the quilt up to her chin and looked at the ceiling with a satisfied expression of a child who has reached the end of a long day and found it acceptable. She go down easy, he said from the doorway. Always, Louisa said. She's been easy since the day she was born. He nodded. He started to leave. Mr. Harmon, she said. He turned. Why, she said. He didn't ask what she meant. You saw your light, he said simply. She looked at him. Storms don't care about reasons, he said. A door open is a door open. He went to the front room. He lay down on the floor by the fire with his coat for a blanket and was asleep in 6 minutes because he had been up since 4 in the morning and the work of the day was done and the right thing had been done and he was a man who slept well when the right thing had been done. By morning, this is a part of the story the title promises. By morning, everything had changed. Here is what changed. Not everything. Not the dramatic, sudden, declared kind of everything. This is what actually changed. Caleb Harmon woke at 4 in the morning as he always did, and the house that had been empty for 7 years had 2 other people breathing in it, and the difference was not something he could have named, but it was there. The way the difference between a room with 1 lamp and a room with 2 lamps is not simply double the light. It is something else, a different quality of warmth, a different relationship to the dark outside. He built the fire. He started the coffee. He went and checked the cattle before the sun came up, the way he always did. When he came back, she was in the kitchen. She had found the flour. She had found the salt and the lard and the cast iron skillet. She had May on a chair pulled up to the table, where the child was solemnly patting a small piece of dough that Louisa had given her with the gravity of someone engaged in important work. The kitchen smelled like biscuits. He stood in the doorway with mud on his boots and the cold still on him from outside and looked at his kitchen, which smelled like biscuits for the first time in 7 years, and something happened in his chest that he did not examine, because he was a practical man, and a practical man does not stand in his kitchen doorway examining what is happening in his chest when there is work to be done. You didn't have to, he started. You let us sleep in your bed, she said, without turning from the stove. I was on the floor. You built the fire before you left. Habit. Sit down, she said. He sat down. May looked at him over her piece of dough. Biscuit, May said, with the tone of someone making an important announcement. I can see that, he said. May went back to patting. He ate breakfast at his own table with a woman he had known for 8 hours, and a 3-year-old who fed him a piece of her dough biscuit with complete seriousness and watched him eat it with the expectation of a chef awaiting a verdict. Good, he said. May nodded slowly, satisfied. Louisa was watching this from the stove. Not watching him, exactly. Watching something. The way a person watches something they had given up on expecting and have suddenly found in front of them and are not sure yet what to do with that. He introduced her to Frank Briggs at noon. Frank had come by to return a borrowed posthole digger and found himself at the table having coffee and being introduced to a woman named Louisa Crane who had arrived last night and was cooking for the ranch temporarily and who asked Frank, within 4 minutes of meeting him, whether the school board had a formal process for reviewing teaching candidates or whether it was more of a conversation. Frank looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at his coffee. More of a conversation. Frank said carefully, "Good." Louisa said, "Conversations I can manage. What time Thursday?" Frank left 20 minutes later with the post-hole digger and an appointment at 7 o'clock Thursday evening, and the expression of a man who'd been organized by someone and is not entirely sure how it happened. Caleb watched him go from the porch. "You didn't have to do that," Louisa said from behind him. "I didn't do anything," he said. "You introduced me as someone worth talking to." He turned. "You are someone worth talking to," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "People don't always lead with that," she said. "Then they're not paying attention," he said. And he went back to work. The days between the storm and Thursday arranged themselves. She cooked 3 meals a day with the focused competence of a woman who's been doing it since she was old enough to reach a stove and who considers it neither beneath her nor above her. Simply something that needs doing well. She mended the fence of torn work shirts she found in the trunk in the corner and returned them folded. She gave May a corner of the kitchen with a wooden spoon and a bowl for entertainment, and May accepted this arrangement as an appropriate professional situation. She walked to the general store on Wednesday and introduced herself to Dale Cutler and spent 15 minutes talking about the curriculum she had used in Abilene and left with Dale Cutler's agreement to bring it up Thursday as a recommendation. She did not tell Caleb she had done this. He found out from Dale on Thursday morning. "She came in yesterday," Dale said, handing Caleb his order. "Talked for a quarter hour about teaching methods. Smart woman." "Yes," Caleb said. "Where'd you find her?" "She found me," Caleb said. Dale looked at him the way people in small towns look at you when they are computing something and have arrived at a number you haven't confirmed yet. Dale said. Caleb took his order and left. He did not think about what Dale was computing. He thought about it the whole ride home. Thursday evening. Louisa put May to bed early. She changed into the better of her 2 dresses, which was dark blue with small buttons at the collar, and she pinned her hair, and she stood in the kitchen and looked at Caleb, who was at the table, and said, "How do I look?" It was a practical question. She was asking whether she looked like a woman a school board would hire, not whether she was beautiful, and he knew that and answered accordingly. He looked at her. Dark blue dress, hair pinned, straight shoulders, the expression of a woman who is prepared. "You look like a teacher," he said. She almost smiled. "Good," she said. "You know what you're going to say?" he said. "I know what I'm going to say." "Then you'll be fine." She nodded. She started for the door. "Louisa," he said. She turned. He had been careful his whole life about what he said. Careful the way a man is careful when he has learned that words have weight and weight has consequences. On the ranch, there was always something requiring attention. The cattle, the weather, the endless particular demands of land. That attention gave him somewhere to put his energy. Tonight, standing in his kitchen watching her leave for a meeting that would determine whether she stayed or went, he found he had something to say and no practical reason not to say it. "They'd be fortunate," he said, "to have you." She stood at the door. She looked at him for a long moment with an expression he hadn't seen on her before. Then she went. He sat with May. May was technically asleep, but had the quality of a child who might not be fully committed to it. He sat in the chair by the bedroom door, and May lay in the bed with her eyes not entirely closed, and they had a conversation that was mostly May saying words. Horse, biscuit, mama, fire, man, and Caleb responded to each one as though she were raising valid points, which she was. At some point, May fell fully asleep. He didn't move right away. He sat in the quiet of the house and listened to the November wind and thought about what he had said and whether he meant in a way she might understand it or in the way he had intended it or whether there was a difference between those two things, and concluded that there wasn't, and that was either fine or it wasn't, and he couldn't do anything about it in a chair by a sleeping 3-year-old at 8 o'clock on a Thursday. So he sat. She came back at 9. He heard the gate. He had the lamp on and coffee hot because he had learned in 3 days that she came back to things, that she returned, that she was not a person who disappeared, and it seemed right to have the lamp on. She came through the door with the cold on her coat and her cheeks flushed from the walk and stood in the kitchen and said, "They offered me the position." He was quiet for a moment. "Of course they did," he said. She laughed. It was the first time he had heard her laugh. Not a polite laugh, not a social laugh. The real one. Sudden, genuine, meaning it. It arrived in his kitchen and stayed there. She sat down at the table. He poured coffee. She told him about the meeting, which had apparently involved Dale Cutler making a speech, Frank Briggs asking 12 questions, and Reverend Aldridge, who had not said much but had nodded at the right moments, which she had learned to recognize as the most meaningful kind of approval. She told him what she'd said about the curriculum and the students and her father's belief that education was the most honest gift one person could give another. She told him the pay was modest, but the school had a small cottage attached that was meant for the teacher. The cottage, he said. It's small, she said, but it's enough. He nodded. He looked at his coffee. Good, he said. That's good. She looked at him. Is it? She said. He looked up. There it was. The question that wasn't really about the cottage. He had spent 34 years being careful. On the ranch, there was always something requiring attention. The cattle, the weather, the fences, the creek. That attention gave a man somewhere to put his mind, somewhere honest and practical and safe. In 3 days, something had shifted. He did not know exactly when. It might have been the morning. He came back from the cattle check, and his kitchen smelled like biscuits for the first time in 7 years. It might have been May feeding him a piece of dough biscuit and waiting for his verdict. It might have been watching her walk to Frank Briggs's table and ask, within 4 minutes, about the school board process. Or it might have been earlier. It might have been the gate, the lamp on the post, a woman who saw a light and walked toward it. The cottage is yours, he said. You earned it. You should take it. She waited. He looked at her directly. But I'd rather you stayed, he said. Not grandly. Not with declarations. Just the true thing, said the way he said most things, straightforward, weighted, not taken back. May has claimed the kitchen corner, he said, and I've gotten used to biscuits. She was quiet. She was looking at him the way she had looked at him on the porch 3 days ago, when she was trying to decide if he meant what he said, or something else entirely. Just biscuits, she said. No, he said. I know, she said. She looked at her coffee. She looked at the kitchen. The fire, the clean table, the wooden spoon in the corner that May had left there. I'll take the cottage, she said. He nodded. On weekdays, she said. He looked at her. The school week is Monday through Friday, she said. The cottage makes sense on weekdays. On weekends, I need to, she paused, and the pause had a quality of precision to it. The quality of a woman chooses her words not because she is unsure what she means, but because she wants to mean it exactly right. I need to bring May somewhere with a real fire and a kitchen. The cottage is very small. It is small, he said. So, she said, practically, he said. The kitchen was quiet except for fire and the wind outside. He held out his hand across the table. She looked at it. She took it, not like a handshake, like something else, like a beginning. May was delighted. This is a part of the story I find myself thinking about, not the hand across the table, though that mattered. May, 3 years old. On Monday morning, she walked with her mother to the schoolhouse cottage to see where Mama would work, and she walked very seriously, holding her mother's hand on one side, and not holding anyone's hand on the other side, because the other hand was available and she had not yet formed the habit. By Friday, she was holding that other hand. By the second Friday, she was not looking up to check if the hand was there. She had simply decided it would be. The school board had made the right decision. Harmon Creek discovered this over following weeks, the same way small towns discover things. One conversation at a time, building from particular to the general. Frank Briggs's youngest came home on the third day and recited 3 facts about Wyoming rivers that Frank did not know, and Frank told Dale Cutler, who told Reverend Aldridge, who made a note in his sermon about the value of knowledge coming from unexpected directions, which everyone understood. The Henderson boy, there's always a Henderson boy, had handwriting that nobody had complimented in a long time. Louisa complimented on the first day, specifically, with reasons. He practiced for the rest of the week, without being asked. She brought the older children to the creek on a Wednesday. Caleb had not planned to be checking the fence line near the creek that morning. He had planned to be in the south pasture. He wanted to check the fence line near the creek. He stood 70 yards away and listened to her ask the children questions they didn't expect to be asked. What direction does the water move? What does that tell you about the slope? Why do the cottonwoods grow here? What happens in spring when the melt comes? The children answered. He stood by the fence with his tools in his hands and thought, she teaches the way good ranchers ranch, by paying attention to what's actually there. He went back to the south pasture and did not tell her he had been there. She knew. She had seen him. She didn't say anything either. Some things are said better by not being said. December. He asked her at Christmas. Not grandly. Not on a particular occasion. On a Sunday evening in his kitchen with May asleep in the bedroom and snow on the Montana hills, and the fire doing what good fires do. He had been thinking about it since November. He had not said it until he was sure that what he was saying was what he meant, and that he was prepared for whatever she said in return. I know what I'm asking, he said. It's not easy. The ranch is hard. Wyoming is hard. You came here alone and you've built something for yourself and for May, and I'm not asking you to give any of that up. He looked at her across the table. I'm asking you to let me be part of it, he said. She was quiet. The fire, the snow outside, May breathing softly in the other room. You already are, she said. Then make it official, he said. She looked at him for a long time. May likes you, she said. May feeds me raw dough, he said. I'm not sure that's a complete endorsement. She laughed. The real one. Yes, she said. They married in March when the first thaw came, and the creek ran clear and the sky over Wyoming was a particular blue that only happens in the mountains when the winter breaks. Frank Briggs and his wife came. Dale Cutler came with flowers from his wife's greenhouse. Reverend Aldridge performed the ceremony in the church that doubled as a schoolhouse, which meant he performed it surrounded by children's drawings on the walls and the alphabet above the chalkboard, which Louisa said was exactly right. May wore a white ribbon in her hair. She stood between them at the altar and held one hand each with the natural authority of a person who has been doing this for months and sees no reason to change. When Reverend Aldridge asked the question, May answered first. Yes, May said clearly into the church quiet. Everyone laughed, including Caleb, who did not laugh often and who meant it when he did. She's not wrong, Louisa said. Their daughter was born the following January. They named her Clara, for the woman whose letter had brought Louisa to Harmon Creek, whose miscommunication had stranded her in a November storm, whose absence had led her to a gate with a lantern burning on the post. Clara Betts, the original one, came back from Cheyenne in April and heard the whole story and said, well, with the expression of a woman who is not sure whether to apologize or take credit. Don't do either, Louisa told her. May accepted her sister with a measured welcome of a 4-year-old who has decided the arrangement is acceptable and wishes it to be known that her position in the household is established. On a spring evening when Clara was 1 year old and May was 5, and the school year was winding toward summer, Caleb came in from the north pasture to find Louisa on the porch with Clara in her lap and May sitting on the steps doing her letters with a piece of chalk on the porch wood. He sat beside her without saying anything. She kept her hand on Clara's back. May drew a careful letter and looked at it with professional satisfaction. The Wyoming evening held them. The mountains, the creek, the school at the end of the road, the ranch behind the house, the lantern on the gate post, burning the way it always burned. There is a question at the center of the story. Not the one on the porch. Not the one in the kitchen on Thursday night. This one. What does it mean to see a light and walk toward it? Louisa Crane stood at a gate in a November storm with $25 and child and a failed lead and a door that had closed in her face. She saw a lantern. She walked toward it, not because she knew what was there, not because she had a plan, because a light was there and she was practical enough to understand that a light in a storm is not nothing. It is something. It is a direction when you have no direction. And she had May on her hip, and May was trusting her to find the next thing, and the next thing was through that gate. That is its own kind of courage, not the dramatic kind, the daily kind, the kind that says, I am out of options, and I have not given up, and there is a light, and I am going to walk toward it. Caleb Harmon had kept a lantern burning on his gate post every night for 7 years, not for any particular reason. Habit. His father had done it. You keep a light on, his father said, because a light is what you have that the dark doesn't, and there is no cause of sharing what you have. He had never thought about it as anything other than habit until a woman in a too-big hat came through his gate in a November storm and told him she had seen his light. He thought about it after that. He thought about it for the rest of his life. I think about that a lot. How much of what matters is not the grand gesture, not the declaration, not the moment with all the weight, but the small, sustained, unconsidered things. A lantern on a gate post every night because your father did it and it costs nothing to share light. A door that you open because the storm doesn't care about reasons and someone is standing in the rain. Coffee kept hot because you've learned that a person comes back, that they return, and it seems right to have something warm waiting. The daily small decisions that add up without your knowing they're adding up into something that someone, someday, will walk through a storm toward. You cannot always know that you are the light. You just keep the lantern burning. You can sleep here tonight, he said. Not a promise of forever. Just one night. Just this. Come in from the storm. There is a fire. There is coffee. There is a kitchen that will, by morning, smell like biscuits. And by morning, everything had changed. Not all at once. Not announced. Just quietly, inevitably. The way water finds a place to ground is going to let it go. The way a light in a storm becomes a lantern on a gate post becomes a gate. That opens becomes a kitchen table becomes a hand. Across it becomes a yes in a church with the alphabet above the chalkboard and a 4-year-old who answers first. That's the whole story. Most good things are that simple when you get to the center of them. A light. Someone willing to walk toward it. Someone who kept it burning. Thank you for sitting at this table with me tonight. Wherever you are, from Wyoming to Wales, from Texas to Tasmania, from Montana to Malaysia, I am grateful you were here. If this story gave you something to carry into your evening, a like means more than you know. And I want to know, what country are you listening from tonight? Drop it below. I read everyone. Until next time, keep the lantern burning.